Welcome. In today's video, we're going to take a look at how to create SharePoint portals. And we're also going to talk about the differences between the different types so you understand what to ask for if you're not the one that's actually creating the portal. A lot of organizations, especially across the federal government, have an IT department that will create it for you. And sometimes you'll have to tell them kind of what you're looking for in order for them to create the right thing, because there are a couple different options, not even just talking about the different template options. So first thing, let's go ahead and talk about who can create the portal. Now, if you are the admin and you have access to the tenant, you'll have the ability to create the portals. I'm not going to cover that specific step because it could be different if you're in, like, say, the federal government or an enterprise level organization. They might have scripts and they might have all kinds of different ways that they're creating the portals to have a very specific look and feel. That process would be very different than just creating it if you are a smaller business or you have your own tenant at home and you're going to create a portal. A lot less goes into that, but if you're using other approaches that are typically found in your enterprise level organizations, very different approaches. So we're just going to assume, for the sake of this video, that you are requesting access for somebody to create a portal for you and you're asking them for a specific type, and then you'll do all the work of actually making the portal do what you want it to. And we're going to cover some of that in this video here. Now, the first question is, what is your use case? You have essentially three different options. What we're looking at right here is a communications page. This is your standard communications page. It is going to be a little bit different than how a modern team site, which is your other option, is going to look and how it's going to function. And then you've also got a modern team, an actual team portal, which looks very similar to just a standard modern team portal without the Microsoft group and the associated team structure. It's going to be a whole bunch of other stuff. Now, if you're new to SharePoint and you're like, what on earth is he talking about? First thing, let's go take a look at what Microsoft describes these as so that you can kind of see how Microsoft would describe this. All right, now on the screen, you're going to see a team site versus communication site. Which one should I choose? And don't worry, the link to this is going to be in the description of the video. So if you want to read the full page, you can do that. But we're going to go ahead and just navigate down here to a table that they've created. And I'm going to show you this one, and then I'm going to show you the one that I created, because I don't think this really tells you everything that you need to know for creating this different portal. So we have the team site, the communication site, and then we have a team site not groups connected, right? So you've got these three different options out there. Effectively, this and this team site options are going to look and feel the same. This is actually going to be a team. You're going to have the Teams interface. You're going to be able to access it through the team interface. And then you're going to have this team site in the back end of SharePoint. It's a good way to look at it is you've got your Microsoft team and you got your SharePoint. It's basically just a front end that accesses all the underlying data. That's really all three of these are. All of the underlying documents or list data, just think about those as being kind of under the layer that you're looking at and interacting with. In the case of the communication site and a team site that's not group connected, you're just getting a SharePoint portal, document library, all the SharePoint list. You're not going to get that associated team or the group calendar and all those functions. So that's really the first starting point, is to understand, what are you looking for? Are you looking for a team site, which is usually for a lot of collaboration, or are you looking for just kind of a portal that everybody can access? That would be this one. And a lot of times I describe this in terms of like an intranet or kind of the public facing version, right? So think of the team site as your intranet. That's your team documents. That's your team storage. That's your team portal for all your team, whatever your organizational level is. That's essentially what this is. It's got kind of restricted access. You might have a ton of different teams and organizations. Each team can access their stuff and not other people's stuff. So this is, again, how I describe kind of what an intranet is. So that's kind of what your team is. These right here can function very similar to this, except for a lot of times you open it up to maybe the entire organization, or maybe even open it up external. All three of these can actually do most of these functions, but they do it differently, and the level of ease for how you do some of the stuff is just different. So if you're thinking about your entire business, maybe you work at a federal agency, you want the entire agency to be able to see what you've got for the most part, but maybe you still want to do some restricted access, you can do all of that very easily with both of these options. Whereas here, Usually all the members of the team can access everything that's on there. When you start breaking things up and saying, you can't see this, but you're still a member of the team, that's when you start running into some problems with a team being set up that way. About once a week, I get a phone call saying, somebody can't access this list in our team portal. And the first question I always ask is, are they a member of the team? And usually the answer is no, they're not a member of the team. We just shared out that folder. Again, the team wasn't really designed to work that way. It does, but you run into all these weird glitches where things don't quite work the way that you expect them to. So if you're going to open it up outside of the team or the small level organizational element, it's best to use a communication site or a team site not connected to a group. I know that's a lot of information. I spent a lot of time kind of explaining the difference between these three things because it's important. If you pick the wrong one, you can't go back. All right. So just keep that in mind. I'm not going to talk a lot about this particular table here because I really don't think it tells you all the information that you need. So let's go ahead and look at the table I created for this. All right, so now we've got this table up. Let's talk a little bit about this. So you got your communication site, you get your group list. So again, these are kind of grouped together. And then you get your team. So this is going to have maybe a planner, or maybe it's going to have an actual team interface. It's going to have the team associated with. What are the primary purposes of this? So this is to publish new pages, resources, broadcasts. So it's kind of like a communication site, right? So it's geared towards communicating information, news articles. It's geared towards a very specific type of use case. And then you've got your functional portal or your department site. So what could this be? Maybe you're doing projects and you want to manage your projects, or maybe you're doing some sort of an IT type system. So this would be a good portal for that type of a scenario. And then you get your full collaboration, your typical Microsoft team. Layout is a key difference between these. So you've got your top navigation and it's a wide layout. So essentially think of filling your screen a lot of times. So if you use like the hero web part, it's going to fill up that entire screen no matter what the resolution of the screen is. It's not going to function the same way in a groupless modern team site. It's going to have a left-hand navigation, but you could also do top navigation for this. So you actually have options here, whereas this one is top navigation, and that's pretty much the only thing you're going to do. And then pretty much these two here for a lot of these functions are going to be very similar or identical. And again, your top nav only, left nav, left nav. Microsoft 365 group, again, these will not have that. This one will. And then for the most part, your site permission model, you can do a lot of the same things, but what's very different is that this is based off of, are you a member of the team? So it's group-based membership. You can still do these SharePoint roles and you can still do these different permissions groups, but they don't work as well. And you do run into some weird glitches if you try to do that with a team. It just wasn't designed to work that way. Another big difference you're going to run into is availability of templates. If you're working on a group list or a team portal here, you're going to have the ability to pull down some different templates. And I'm going to actually show you what these look like when we get in there. And I want to call out this and then your navigation are really the two biggest areas of difference between these three items. And mainly really just the communication site and then the other ones here. So you're going to have template options, but the template options are going to be very different for a communication site versus a modern team site. In a modern team site, you're going to see stuff like your IT solution or your project management solution. And then over here, you're going to see, again, just more event planning, or it's just more of like a communication model. Again, we'll show you some of those different templates here in a little bit. For the most part, everything else in here, you can kind of work with on all three for the most part, but I did want to show you the full list. I just wanted to call out those. You can pause the video and look at this more in depth if you want to do that. Now let's go ahead and navigate back so you can actually see what some of this stuff actually looks like. All right, so first up we have the communications. And again, when you create a communication site, it's always going to look like this. This is kind of the out-of-the-box template, unless they change your template based off of something you've said. This is what it's going to look like. And this is, again, that hero web part that I was talking about. This will essentially grow to fill the entire screen. And you might be saying, well, can't you do the hero in the modern? Yes, you can, but it functions differently on the page. So this is one of about 3 or 4 different web parts that just work a little bit different in this portal versus how they work in a modern theme portal. And it really comes down to filling the entire screen is the best way to describe it. is you'll fill the entire screen. I'm working on a small portion of my screen, so I can't really demonstrate what that looks like. So you have to take my word for it that this will fill the entire viewable screen when you do this. And I've used this for news articles a lot of times. If I'm doing kind of a news article and I want to fill up the entire screen, then a lot of times I'll use this. But the text is it won't quite work the same way on the page. It'll be more centered on the page. So again, this is communication. What are the differences? So we see the site access here, and then we see our top navigation. We don't see a left-hand navigation over here. Now let's go ahead and look at our modern team site. So here we've got the modern team site. And if we come up here, we're going to see that we have site access. It took a second to load there, but it looks the exact same right here. Now, when we look at an actual team version of this is going to look a little bit different. So we'll call that out. And then we're going to see we got the left-hand navigation here. We can add top navigation. So we have both the left-hand and the top navigation. So you can do both in this particular design. But that's really what you're looking at is this is going to look a little bit different, and then this is going to look a little bit different. All right, now let's go look at that team interface and see how that compares. All right, now this is the team interface, and you'll see it looks, again, very similar, right? But we've got a member here versus the other approach where it was just the site members or site access. So it's a little bit different here. That's your key indicator that you're looking at a team versus a modern team separate from a group, is that we've got membership now. Otherwise, it looks the exact same. We're also going to get this little team icon here. So that'll, again, key you in that you're looking at a team portal here. So that's really the big difference in the layout here, right? So that's the key thing I want to call attention to. All right, now what about templates? Let's go back to the communication site so we can take a look at how the templates in a communication site compares to a modern team site. All right, so to look at the templates, we come up here, we look at the little gear, and then we're going to see apply a site template. And then we're going to get the list of different options. Again, this is a communication site, so this is what we're going to see on a standard communication site. And then you've got your brand, your crisis management, your department, your learning central, leadership connection, human resources, new employee onboarding. And again, your organization may restrict some of these down, but for the most part, these are all the different options you've got there. And then you've got blank. That's it. So you're not going to see program management. You're not going to see the IT help desk. Let's go see what those look like. All right, so now we're back on the modern page. Let's go back up here to the gearbox and apply a site template. So you get your standard team, event planning, IT help desk, project management, training design, training course, door collaboration. So you can see all different templates. Now you might be asking, well, couldn't you just recreate them? Yes, you can. But if you know that you're going to be doing project management, you might want to have a team portal that gives you the option to have this template right out of the box. Again, a lot of times you have to modify these things pretty significantly also. So if you like just doing a standard team or a blank team, you'll get none of the stuff, and then you can kind of customize everything from scratch the way that you want it versus whatever the template that Microsoft put together is. But it's good to be aware of if you're looking for a specific template because you've done it before, then you got to make sure you ask for the right type of page because the communications one's not going to give you project management. You can, inside a communications page, create this, all the associated lists and different views. You can do that. So just be aware that you can replicate these templates in any of them. It doesn't matter which one it is, you can replicate it. But if you want to have that start point, it is a little bit convenient to be able to click this button here and then say use the template. And it's going to do all the work of creating the SharePoint list for both the projects and the issues. And it's going to have a whole bunch of different things that it's going to say, maybe when you're running your project, these are the things that you need based off of typical understanding of how project management works and what most teams would need for project management. So you can see you've got the issue tracker, you got the progress tracker, all your documents, activities, your news, and then you're going to have your project tracker list over here. So it builds all of that for you. And we'll say do this later here. So those are the key things. It's basically just how you navigate and how the navigation is set up, and then your templates. Those are the two things that are really kind of different between the different options you've got. All right, so let's assume that you picked the one that you want. Maybe it's this version will kind of work inside of this page here. Again, this is our modern team site not connected to a group. If I wanted to change this now, all I have to do is go up here and hit the edit button, and then I'll be able to edit this page. I can get rid of For example, this section, if I want to get rid of the section, all I have to do is hit the button here. Maybe I want to have 2 columns, 3 columns, 1/3 on the left and 2/3 on the right. I can do all of that just by selecting this, right? And it's going to change all the design here on how things are set up based off of what I select. If I want to add a new section, all I have to do is come over here and I can add a new section. If I want to delete something from this section, all I have to do is select it and hit the delete button and it'll go away. If I want to turn the comments off, you can always turn this on later. A lot of times you don't want comments on the page's design. Maybe you're putting it out there for testing and you want to get people's opinions. Then that's a great example when you would put the comments on. But let's go ahead and turn these off. I'm not expecting any comments. And then I can come up here and I can hit add section. All right. So if I want to add a flexible section, we can go ahead and select that. And then we can choose, left to right or top to bottom, make it a collapsible. And then if we do that, if we come over here, you'll have the option to drop this down. So that's a great way to, maybe it's news and not every time you want people to see all the different news, or you want the viewer to have the option to view it or not. Then you can make it a collapsible so they don't have to have that. You don't have to have the full page expanded all the time. And you can set that right here. Let's go ahead and turn that back off again. And let's go ahead and close this. And we've got our extra section. Maybe we don't want this section, so let's go ahead and delete the section. Then we come over here and let's add a web part. So what are the options we've got for adding a web part? So you can add text, you can add an event, you can add images, all these different things that you have the options to integrate. Now, depending on if you're in the GCC, you might not have all the same options as what you have in the commercial side or the enterprise area, but you'll see all these different options for what you could put in there. Dashboards or Power Apps. A lot of times I'll build a Power App and I'll integrate it into a page here and add that in there. You can add Power BI directly in here, or maybe a form for completion. These are all things that we're going to cover in future videos, so I'm not going to explore them in great depth here. A lot of times the organizational chart is a great one. It's based off of your Active Directory, so depending on how people are loaded in and what information your organization adds, you can configure that. And then again, you got basically the standard things you're going to see on most of these. I really like the YouTube one because you can integrate maybe TED Talks or some how-to video. The YouTube University is phenomenal for learning, so it's a great way to add information for the people that are going to use this web portal for information that they could go watch. So that's basically what you can add as far as a web part. Now let's say that you make a mistake and you screw everything up. Well, just discard your changes. I do recommend when you know you've got something set up the way that you want it, save every once in a while. That way when you discard changes, you're not going to lose something that actually did work. But all you have to do is hit this, and then everything gets undone that you did. And it goes back to the last working version. So it looks the exact same. Nothing has changed here. So that will be how you configure different pages for how you set these things up. And then what about actually setting up an image here or the name? How do you do that? So you come up here and then you've got the change the look option right here. And then we can change our theme. So if you want to change your color, you can do that here. Let's cancel that. Let's change the look and we'll do the header. And this is where you can choose a minimal, standard, extended. If I want to have more information, we'll go back to the minimal. Maybe I want to change the color. I can do that also. Maybe I want to give it a little bit of shade and color it the same as the top bar here. Do I want to have the title visible? If not, then I can get rid of that. And this is where you can change your logo. And for this, I'm not going to go ahead and change it. You've kind of seen what that looks like on these other pages here. So you can put the logo in there. You can have you'll have the option for the smaller logo and then also the bigger logo. So your thumbnail and your logo. Let's go ahead and hit the cancel here, or actually we'll just go back. And then you've got the navigation option here. So if you want to have your vertical or your horizontal, you can flip-flop it depending on what you want. And then you can also choose a mega menu versus a cascading. Either approach works. I typically use the vertical because you can also add other options up here. And I'm going to show you that here in just a second. Let's go ahead and hit cancel. Now, what if I want to add links up here on the top bar? Then what we do is we go into site contents. There's a couple different ways you can get there. This is just one of the ways that I typically go with. And then you go to your site settings here, and then all of a sudden you've got the edit links option right here. and you can add all your links, and these will go at the top. So if we go ahead and add a link, and we'll just say Google, and we'll go ahead and add the Google address and hit OK, and we can see Google is up there. But maybe I want to put that as inside of something, right? So we'll say, we'll call it search portals. In this case, we'll leave the address blank here, and then we'll put Google inside of search portals and drop that there. So now we've got that drop down menu, so we can continue to do this as deep as necessary on adding all your links to the top page. And let's go ahead and hit the save button here and see what this looks like. We'll go back to the home page, and there we've got search portals and Google. And if we go ahead and click that, then we'll be able to navigate to that portal. So you can have your links over here, and you can have your links at the top. So you can have the best of both worlds. A lot of times how I set this up is I'll put these being inside of the page here. So it's going to navigate you to all the different resources inside of your portal. And this is maybe going to take you to the higher level organization or other organizations or other resources maintained elsewhere. You can put that here. Now, what about adding document libraries and creating new lists, which are, in my way, I describe them as kind of like Excels. All we have to do is click over to here and go to our site contents. And then we're going to see everything that's inside of our site. So we'll see that document library, we'll see that issue tracker list, and we'll see our progress tracker list. Oh, the other thing I wanted to mention when you do this approach to creating these is you're going to get all of the views set up for it also. So it's going to have all these different views created for you based off what they think you're going to need or want. Some of these views can include JSON to get them formatted a certain way. So again, they put a little bit of work into creating these templates. So there is some benefit in using a template versus or using a communication page and then kind of building it out. So there are some things to consider there when you're looking at the different options. Let's go ahead and hit the back button there. Now, what if we need to add something? Maybe we need another tracking list, or maybe we need another document library for project documents or something like that. All we have to do is hit the new button up here, and then you can create a document library or a list or a page all from right here. And if we create a document library, you can do from an existing one where you can pull it from another portal. Maybe you've got it set up exactly the way you want it at another portal. You can do it this way, or you could just do a blank library right here. And it's the same for doing a list. You could, again, use one that's already pre-set up if you want, or start from scratch and build it yourself. All right, let's go ahead and close that off. Now, what about a page? So these are pages, right? So when we look at our home page, that's a page that's been created. We can also create a new page, and it automatically creates it as soon as you hit the button. So this has already been saved, it's created. I would probably need to go and delete this if I don't actually use it for anything. And it's basically just a blank canvas that you can use to create. Maybe it's a functional area, or maybe it's some sort of information page for how you become a project manager, or maybe it's something related to what your team does. You can put all that information on here, and then you'll be able to link to this from your main page so that they can get to the information that you've created. Now let's go ahead and back out of here. Where did that page go? So let's go to Site Pages. And we'll see that the page I just created is right here, about a minute ago. Now, if I want to delete this because I don't need it, then I'll just come over here and I'll look for the delete button. I'll delete it, and then it's gone. And then here's our home page, and here's our project home page here. So we've got different options. Now, what you could do is, let's say you want it to look kind of like your home page. You want to have the same setup. All you have to do is select this one and then copy it. And then you can essentially start with that home page as your template, and then you can modify it from there. This works great if you've already got a page created and you want to replicate some of the same theme on the new page. Works awesome for that. So I'll do this all the time for training pages. So if I'm building a page for this type of training, and then the next training that I'm going to create, I want it to have the same theme, I'll just duplicate that first page and then change all the wording, text, videos, and images to make it work for the new type of training. So this is a great way to keep your theme across your portal the same. All right, let's go back to the home page here. Now we've talked a lot about how to set up our page and different things you can do. What about the permissions and what about the site features? How do we do those things, right? So we want to configure more of the settings for our portal. All we have to do is go over here If we're looking for site permissions, let's go to site permissions here. And then a lot of times I'll go to advanced permission settings here. Now, this is incredibly important. I need to explain how this works by default from Microsoft because I don't agree with this, but that's what it is. Automatically, let's say that somebody needs access to this portal. When they request access, they get added to the members by default. By default, that's an edit permission. Now, the edit permission allows you to delete pages, lists. You can create lists, you can create document libraries, you can do a whole bunch of different things. Might be more than you want to give the standard user of the portal. And I've got an example of this. I created a portal for an organization, had multiple pages, had everything all built out, and then I didn't change the setting, but I explained to the user how to use this. I wasn't the one that was going to maintain it. I handed it to another owner and then they maintain it, and I explained how this works and to be cautious about who they automatically approve. Well, they added some other owners, didn't give them the same talk. And next thing you know, they're just automatically approving, hey, John looks like he needs access. We'll go ahead and add access. They came in a couple days later, and all of a sudden, one of the pages was missing. Well, somebody had deleted the page because they had edit permission. So when they clicked the link, an entire page, and in this particular page was set up for financial information, was deleted because somebody had deleted it. Now, fortunately, it gets stored in the recycle bin, so you can restore it. But what if I'm a really great admin for this portal and I empty the trash bin on a fairly regular basis to kind of keep things tidy and maybe OCD with stuff like that, and that page got deleted? There's a good question of whether every user needs to have the edit permissions. So why do they have this? Well, pages are multi-purpose. They get used for a lot of different things. A page is used for a news article. So if you wanted to create a news article, that would be a page. They're also used for events. So the event that gets created is going to have its own page. So that's why they typically need the edit permission. But again, not every user is going to do that. So I tend to think that the users that need that get extra permissions and everybody else gets contribute. So what I recommend you do is you come in here, edit your user permissions, and instead of giving them edit, you give them contribute, right? So we just changed this. And we can see this, we can add, edit, or delete lists, view, add, update, and delete list items and documents. It doesn't say it, but they also can do this with pages. So we want them to be able to can view, add, update, and delete list items and documents. So they can go in and remove something from a list, remove a document, but they can't necessarily delete these things. If you need people to be able to delete also, then just give them the extra permission of edit. Let's go ahead and cancel this and we'll go back here. Now what we can do is we can create a new group. So we come into here, create group, and then you can assign it a different permission. So for example, edit. Maybe you need to have these users can edit. Whenever you add them in there, they'll automatically get contributed, but you'll have to go into the portal and give them extra permissions for edit. Or maybe you have somebody that's going to be doing design for your portal. You give them design, you don't necessarily need to give everybody full control. Design gives them pretty much everything they need if you give it to them. Full control is a lot of permissions. I don't usually recommend giving everybody full control. That's not always a good idea. All right, let's go ahead and cancel out of here. All right, so that's permissions. There are some other things you can do here as far as the request settings. So if you wanted to change those, you can come into here. Maybe you want it to just go to you, so you'd put your email address in there. Maybe you don't. Maybe your approach to avoiding that issue of automatically adding everybody is you have to approve every single request because all the owners are going to get an email, so any one of them could do this. That's another way you could restrict this down. And you can also do this here where you don't allow members to share. I usually recommend sharing, let them share it, but just be cautious about how the permissions are given and make sure anybody that's granting permissions understands how you want them granted. All right, let's go ahead and close out of this. What about more advanced features for this site? Let's go back up to here, and then we'll go back to our site settings. And we're going to see a couple different things. We've got the site collection administrator. Now, normally your site collection administrator is the person that the portal is created for, but every organization is different. They could have somebody in IT for each area of the organization, and they are the ones that are put as a site collection administrator, so they'll be able to see these things. You might not be able to see this as an owner. Within the federal government, a lot of times whoever the portal is created for is set as a site collection administrator. But again, it's very different across organizations on how this is done. So you may not see these features in here, which is why I'm going to show them to you, because there are some good things in here to be aware of that you can't adjust if you can't see these things. First thing we'll take a look at is our site collection features. Now, a lot of times you don't have to change anything in here, but I'm going to kind of scroll through this. Again, you can pause it, slow it down. That way you can get a good glimpse at what is in here and what might need to be adjusted. But you've got a lot of different options. Maybe you want to do project web app ribbon. I haven't used that in quite a while, but that used to be really popular. Maybe you want to set it so the open documents in the client applications by default instead of inside of the web browser. A lot of times people like that feature. And then if we keep going down here, we'll see some of the old features that are no longer used. Maybe you want to set up the 3 straight workflows. Again, a lot of these features aren't really used as much anymore, but again, they're here if you need them. So it's good to be aware where you would go to get these different options. All right, let's go ahead and hit the back button. Again, you can kind of pause and take a look at everything that was there. The other function that's really helpful in here is storage metrics, so you can see the breakdown of how your portal is performing and where your storage is really being maxed out. If you start getting towards the end of your storage limit, as you can see, I've got a pretty good amount of storage space, so I'm not too worried about using up too much space here. But a lot of times you can fill these up, especially if you've got lots of projects or you've got video files or audio files. You can very quickly fill these SharePoint portals up. So it's good to be aware of where you would go to see how your storage utilization is going so far. All right, let's go ahead and hit the back button there. And if we scroll back down, that's pretty much it for the site collection. There are some other things in here as far as searches and your search schemings that are more advanced, things that probably cover in future videos. The average user is probably not going to do a lot of things here. And if we go back up, the other one that we're going to call attention to is your manage site features. Now, as an owner, you'll be able to do this function. And there's some kind of interesting things in here. Content organization can be helpful if you turn that function on. And then you've got the project functionality. So if you wanted to turn that on, you can kind of explore and experiment with that. And then you've got your SharePoint viewers. I always activate this because this is going to allow you to see who's been viewing files on there. So maybe there's a question of you send out a file for people to look at and you want to make sure that everybody actually looked at it. This will actually show it to you. So if we activate that, this is one thing I pretty much do on pretty much every portal is turn that function on. So we can always deactivate something if we turn it on and the function's not what we're looking for, it doesn't do the things that we're needing it to do. You can always turn that back off by deactivating it. And again, we'll keep on scrolling down here. And we've got our site notebook. A lot of times you don't need a site notebook, but again, it's by default, it's going to be turned on a lot of times. One that's kind of fun, I played around with a little bit, is the spaces. It does a mixed reality inside of the portal, which is, in theory, it's a great idea, but a lot of people were getting motion sick and it really didn't take off, basically that 3D type stuff. But yes, SharePoint does support it, and you can use it pretty effectively. But again, people were having motion sickness, and if people don't have the glasses and don't have the hardware, then it's kind of useless and it's kind of hard to use in that particular setup. But it was an interesting approach, but it never really took off. But if you want to play around with that, this is how you would turn that on. That's pretty much the only big one is the SharePoint viewers. Everything else I generally leave alone in here, but you can explore announcement tiles or community site features or content organizers, or all of these can be turned on and you can kind of play around with it and see if it does what you're looking for. But it's always good to look at this and then see what new features. For example, the spaces wasn't always there, and then it came out, I don't know, it was probably like 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago that they turned that on. It looked like it was going to have a lot of promise and never really went anywhere. So, but that'll be your site setting options, navigation, and then you can also set your site administration, your regional settings. So a lot of really good features in here. Again, really the only one I typically come in by default for a portal is I turn on the viewing option for SharePoint viewers, and then everything else is as the need arises, I'll turn it on. Well, that's pretty much it for this video. It's already a lot longer of a video than I originally had planned for, but there's a lot I wanted to cover, and I wanted to really drill home the difference between a communication site, a modern team without a group, and then your team portal. I wanted to make sure I emphasized that and kind of clarified when you might use one or all of these different options for, and then also what you lose depending on which option you go for. In future content, I'm going to be kind of building out this program management page. So there's going to be a lot of things that we're going to do with this page moving forward to kind of demonstrate how you use SharePoint for various things. So check out that content. As a reminder, if you like this content, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe so you get notified about the content. It really helps the algorithm navigate you to my stuff in the future, as well as get it out to other people and help grow the channel. Until next time.